And now, Deborah Kobylt Live.
Thank you very much. And joining us today on Deborah Kobylt Live is a dear friend, Dan Lothian, former White House correspondent for CNN. He covered President Obama. Also, he runs Little Park Media Production. That's it's a production company that he runs. And he's also a professor of journalism over at Northeastern University over in Boston. Thanks so much, Dan, for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and a little disclosure, a dear friend.
That's right.
So we started in the business together and remain very close friends to this day. But I thought I'd have you on today, Dan, because you've got perspective. You've been in the White House, you've covered the White House, you've been in the press room, and you told me that you were there at the time during the transition between President Bush and Barack Obama. Could you tell us a little bit about that? What was that moment like?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it was a historic moment as President Obama, the first African American president, as you know. But there's always sort of that big question as to how that transition will happen, how that transfer will happen. You have a Democrat, you have a Republican, one lost, one won. Will they be gracious, the president going out? Will the new president be able to forge some kind of relationship during that period of time that can set them up well for their administration? There's so much that has to happen, behind the scenes to make sure that when you start on day one, it's not starting from zero, but you're starting from weeks and weeks of getting a lot of things done. And so I was able to witness how that all happened, the meetings that were had by the outgoing administration and the incoming administration, the access that the incoming administration had to not only national security briefings, but all kinds of briefings about things that were going on that were public and private as well. And that's important. And I saw that happen during at the beginning of the Obama administration.
You said you were in the room when the president and president-elect were there, right? What was that moment like, just as from a personal point of view, and of course, as a journalist? Is it a bit of an aha moment, like, wow?
Yeah, it is. And you have to also remember, while I had covered the White House for a stint when I was at NBC, this was my first time now as a full-fledged White House correspondent. I'd only been on the beat for, I think it was 3 weeks during the Bush administration, and so it hadn't been a lot of time, and so I was still quite in awe of the whole experience, pinching myself every time I
Oh,
went
sure.
and walked into the White House to say, okay, I'm here. This is where I'm going to be for the next 4 years, and it ended up being the next 5 years. So yeah, it was a powerful moment. Certainly, seeing what had happened in the historic election was pretty amazing. But I think just from the standpoint as a reporter, for the first time getting to cover the White House full time, that was a great moment for me in my career.
And you said you got to see the transition. What was President Bush like, and what was President Obama like? I know that President Obama has said that the Bushes were quite gracious, but what did you see?
They were very gracious, and even now you hear President Bush talking about the importance of acknowledging the President-elect Biden, and even now you see the graciousness of what the former president is doing, and it was very much like that when he was moving out of office, and even looking back, some of the things I didn't witness, but I got to see later on. There's a picture circulating of the Bush daughters with the Obama daughters who were so young at the time, and showing them around the White House and showing them this one hallway where they could slide down next to the carpet. Um, kind of how you expect it to be. Politics is a brutal sport, and you know that someone has to win and someone has to lose. But what really I think cements someone's legacy is how. I mean, it's important what you do while you're in office, but how do you step away? How do you lose? And I was able to see that with former President Bush, offering nothing but positive praise for the president, offering his support, certainly helping try to make the transition as smooth as possible.
What did you hear that the transition was like between President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump at the time? Because I remember when Donald Trump and his wife Melania got out of that limousine, right, at the White House, carrying that Tiffany box as a gift. And I felt the tension. I could cut it through the television screen. I know you weren't there then, at least I don't think so. But what did you hear? What was that transition like? Because then I want to get to this transition because we don't have one yet.
Right. Well, again, and I should point out, I wasn't there, so I don't have any
Right.
firsthand knowledge of, what it was like behind the scenes. There were a lot of reports about there being a little bit of tension, obviously, as that transition was happening. Again, I wasn't there to witness it, but you can imagine that the campaign was, it was a tough campaign, and certainly for
Yeah.
Democrats who expected that they would be winning, they didn't. And so, you can just imagine how that would play out behind the scenes. But I can tell you, in terms of giving the incoming Trump administration, and this is again based on all the reporting that was done out there, given the Trump administration access to national security briefings, any kind of information that typically is handed off to an incoming administration, by all accounts, the Obama administration did do that. Did they do it with a smile on their face? I'm sure they did not. But to the extent that they needed to, hand over all pertinent information, give access to information or office space, all of that, it's my understanding that that was done when President Trump won.
Okay, I know that these offices are swept clean, but I often wonder, is there like a little note that they glue underneath the desk or
They
something behind
do,
the
actually.
fireplace? They really do. Oh, tell me about that, because that would be the fun stuff. Or from the little girls, like right behind the bed, underneath
Yeah.
something. Like, is there ever something that they find that they didn't expect to find? Because that'd be the fun part.
No, that has always been the case, and I wish I had sort of brought my list along, and I'm trying to recall here, but I know that President Bush left a note in the drawer in the Oval Office for President Obama. I'm not sure if President Obama left any notes around, but it's over the past administrations, there's always been something that's left behind, often in humor or sometimes just in support of the incoming president. Most of the things that if notes are left, it's usually one of giving a little bit of advice, and letting the incoming president understand, how much is at stake, and how much basically the country depends on them, and how it's an honor for them to do what they are going to do, and always remember that. And those aren't exact quotes, but usually that's kind of the message that's around a lot of these notes that are passed from one president to the next.
To your point, do you think that will happen should this play out, that Vice President Biden remains the president-elect and then is in fact becomes a president? Because we know this is being fought at the moment by the Trump administration. I've never quite seen anything like this. I know you haven't either. What do you think Donald Trump would possibly leave behind? Maybe some angry notes. I don't know. You took my election. I mean, if I'm going to ask you to guess here because you don't know,
Right.
what's going on? You probably have colleagues who are telling you what's going on behind the scenes. I'm sure you do. People in the press room. What's going on, and what do you think we can expect to happen? Again,
Yeah, so
you're not
look,
there, but yeah.
Yeah, and again, there's a lot of speculation, but certainly
Right.
I've been reading a lot about what reporters who cover the White House day in, day out, what they are seeing, what they're hearing from their sources, and what people outside the White House are also saying based on their connections to various operatives. And the overwhelming, I think, theme here is that Donald Trump, and there's no secret here, Donald Trump does not lose. And so, by all accounts, he himself, and certainly those close to him, realize that a lot of these allegations that are being made out there, aren't, if there's anything that they find at all, at least at this point, does not appear to be substantial, that it would reverse the elections, and that would give him another 4 years in the White House. And so why is he doing what he's doing? Well, I think a lot of people have settled on the fact that perhaps, since he doesn't like to lose, he needs to kind of set himself up for a gracious exit, at least in his mind. And how do you do that? Well, you say, I didn't lose. I was cheated. It's a way to feel good about losing. And so I think that's pretty much what a lot of people feel. But having said that, I do believe that there's a process that this great nation has by which you can go to the courts if you find anything that is of fraud or anything of suspicious nature, and you can get the evidence and you take it to the court. That's the thing about America, that's available to a president who has some grievance with how the election results turned out. But at this point, it appears as if they've kind of flipped it around. It's like, we think stuff happened, now let's go find out. Or if you hear of anything that happened, please let us know so we can move forward with this legally. It's usually there's strong
call 1-800-Trump, please.
Yeah.
Let us know. We've got an 800 number. Quick, call us.
Right. Or even giving away money, and say, hey, there's a prize if you can come up with something, right? So that's wrong. And as for your second question as to, do I think that, what will he leave behind, or will there be any sort of gracious transfer? Well, there hasn't been throughout the administration between the president and Democrats. He's never minced any words to tell you exactly how he feels. I don't expect him to change now. I held out hope early in his administration that we would see a different human. And again, this is not about the politics. This is about his style, his personality. And I expected that we would see something slightly different, a little bit more presidential, a little more respectful. And we haven't seen that yet of President Trump. So I'm not expecting that that we'll see that anytime soon. However, it would be a great surprise if all of a sudden he stepped up and said, look, I tried, I lost, you won, congratulations.
And how about this? I've got 2 months left, and here's what I want to do, because this is what I want to leave to the American people. I mean, is he even thinking that way, or is he just there going, oh my gosh, what could we figure out? I wonder, it's a national security, threat, really, that I wonder what's being done in terms of his job every day. Is he actually showing up on the job, or trying to figure out how to get the election? Do you have any idea?
I think it's either Washington Post or New York Times had an article today about that very same thing, that so much focus is being placed on the election results, that the president has really taken a step back from his duties and hasn't really done a whole lot, in his day job. The White House, at least an assistant spokesperson, did push back on that, saying that in fact the president is carrying out his duties. But I think the reporting shows that there is this obsession with finding something illegal so this election can be reversed, the results can be reversed. And unfortunately, what's unfortunate, I think, in all of this is that the American people, the very hardworking American people who voted for him, and voted for him for a reason, whether it's on policy issues or personality, they thought it was important enough to do that amazing thing of that one vote and casting it from him. And they expect the president to be working for them. And some of them, frankly, have bought in, I think, to this whole message of there's something illegal that happened. And they've also bought into something that I think makes absolutely no sense, which is it's only illegal in the states where he lost. Well, what about in the states where he won? If an election is rigged, it's very hard to just rig it in the states where he lost, right? What about all the Republicans who won on the Senate side, or even the seats they picked up in the House?
That's right.
It's very hard to somehow rig the election where you vote against the president, but then you vote for the Republicans in the Senate and the House.
Right, but then all of a sudden everything is okay. No, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, it makes no sense. But this is what we live in.
Dan, how long can this go on? Do you really think that he'll eventually concede? And if he doesn't, 3 questions here for you. How long can this go on if he doesn't concede? What happens on the 21st of January, for goodness sakes? Do they pull him out? Does he leave out the back door? Does he ever make a speech again? What do you think?
Well, there was that, I think it was on election night, or actually it was sometime right after the election, someone with the Biden campaign put out a note or a message. I think it was a short quote. And I thought it was a little snarky, and it basically said, if the president doesn't leave, there are ways to sort of remove him from the White House. I hope it doesn't get to that. I hope.
Oh, it can't.
Yeah,
it can't.
It would be on the national stage. I think already, many people have pointed out it's been an embarrassment, and I think it would be further embarrassment. Here we are preaching democracy around the world, and we're struggling internally with our own democracy here. How can we preach when we don't practice? And I would hope that that and there are reports out there that the president, after a week or so, when there is no evidence of any wrongdoing, if in fact that's the case, that the president at that point will say, okay, you won, or we'll just back off and not say anything else. And I
And
hope
hope
that's
and hopefully does the business of the people, right? If he's able
yeah.
to do that. And there's some good news, right? We've got a vaccine that looks very promising, or possibly 3 vaccines, and we could be administering them by the end of the year, which means, President Trump, that's on your watch. So that's a good thing, right? There's a lot that he can still continue to take credit for. And if I were him and he called me up and asked me to consult for him, I'd say, let's look at some of the things that you did and did work. And
Exactly.
as opposed to casting this terrible spell on as you're leaving the door, because that's what people remember, as we well know, right? But there's quite a bit.
Yeah, I always say that when you're writing a story, it's about how you start that story, but more importantly, it's how do you end it, right? Because that's the last thing people remember. And like if I were counseling the president, what I would say is, let's take a look at your legacy. That's what's important now. You lost the election. The votes clearly show that. So how can you win? Well, you can win by really spending the next several days in this White House, crafting your building, putting the building blocks, if you will, for how you want people to think about you. And wouldn't it be great if all of a sudden you just flipped everything on its head, and the way everyone thought you were, that all of a sudden you come out and you're gracious and you extend, greatness to the and access to the incoming administration. And then you start going on a tour and highlighting, not in a, they didn't do this and I did this, but in a presidential way, really highlighting all the good that you did. And take all the credit for, pushing to get a vaccine. Even if this one wasn't directly funded by as part of what the administration was doing, still take credit for it. It happened on your watch.
I agree, right? It happened on the man's watch. So take it and at least have a little checklist of things that you did right. Should you ever want to come back and run again? People say he might run again. His kids might run again. I don't know, but at least leave on a positive note. Now, when you were covering President Obama, you got to know Joe Biden, right, fairly well. There's photos of you. I don't even know if you sent them to us, but there's photos of you with your kids with Joe Biden. Tell us what you think of him as a man and what you think he'll be like as a leader.
Yeah, look, Joe Biden is not the perfect candidate. I think he was the right candidate for this time because, frankly, a great number of Americans wanted someone who could restore a little calm to the nation. I don't really, there are people out there who just think he's the greatest politician ever, but I think more than not, it's people who are saying this is someone who we think we can wake up in the morning and not worry about what he's tweeting, right? He can
that alone.
That's a huge win right there.
That alone,
right? I know. And he can, and I think he can restore some calm globally as well. I've been listening to a lot of interviews with various world leaders, and they said, part of the last 4 years is not really knowing what's going to come at you with the President Trump. And so, but I think he's the right leader for the moment, for the time that we're in, actually. I think he'll have a longer honeymoon maybe than other presidential candidates, but at some point he'll still have to deliver, and there are going to be issues when we find out exactly who will be in control of the Senate. There are going to be some challenges in getting some of his agenda through Congress, and so we're watching that closely. But on a personal side, look, Joe Biden is someone who is an old school politician. Where I traveled with him to Iraq, and I remember for about 45 minutes I tell the story of how he sat on the arm of the seat in front of me on the plane and was just up in my face, and we're having these conversations, and my arm was sore because every time he makes a point, he whacks you in the arm. Just a really old school kind of politician who loves to, have conversations with reporters and chew over policy issues, and just a fun person to be around. But one of the things I've always pointed out is that even though, I had access to him, whether it's on that trip to Iraq, whether there were events that he had at his home for not only, myself, but for my family and other reporters who were covering him. I remember I told him, I said, look, we're here, and I know sometimes it's controversial when reporters get too close with the people they cover, but I want to let you know, we appreciate all of this, but we're here. Our number one responsibility is to be a reporter. And if, as easily as we're having this conversation now in the pleasantries, if we find out that something's going wrong, there's something negative going on, we'll jump all over it. He goes, no, I get it. Like, he understands and respected that, reporters were there to do a job, but that didn't stop him from wanting to, get to know reporters and have a sort of a different interaction with them outside of, the halls of the White House or up on Capitol Hill.
Well, it brings humanity to it, number one, and it's also very smart, right? If you have a nice relationship with the reporter, the reporter is always going to do his or her job, but they're going to think a little bit, oh, he's a good guy. Did he really do that? You know what I mean? What did you think about the way President Trump went after some of the reporters in the press room? I was stunned. I also wish that I was there, right? Could you imagine taking that from him? It was comical, to say the least. I thought it was deeply flawed, though, to do that to the press. What are your thoughts?
And I think, we sort of laughed about this at some point. He had a lot of fun with reporters during his campaign, his first campaign. And I think everybody kind of saw it as, oh, well, this is Donald Trump, right? And there's no danger to it other than Donald Trump mouthing off with reporters. But the deeper and darker that it got in terms of how he interacted with reporters, and the louder that this cry of fake news got. And it really troubled me when not only were people now, the general public, using fake news when it was something they simply didn't like. I mean, there really is a thing as fake news, like we used to talk about, made up news, right? But then you started hearing from other countries and other world leaders then starting to use the fake news with their media. And I thought, wow, this is troubling, right? Because if you tag fake news to just something you don't like, then that really messes with the whole notion of what is truth. Right. And so that, to me, was the danger behind it. The way that he responded and interacted with reporters most of the time, I think, sort of made it a field day for everybody out there to verbally assault reporters at some of his events or on social media.
Well, Dan Lothian, we'd like to have you back either before or after the inauguration. We had planned to go to the inauguration because we cover them, but of course with COVID, we won't be able to be there. We were there 4 years ago. It was an interesting time attending that inauguration. I'll tell you that. I felt like I was at, a royalty ball. The Trumps there was one more lovely gown after the next. It was interesting.
That's kind of what happens. These events are always a chance for people to put on their black ties and their sparkly outfits and kind of, celebrate the transition of power in Washington. And it happens every 4 years, right? This is an amazing thing about our democracy. And unfortunately, because of the political circumstances and because of the health-related COVID circumstances, this is kind of an odd transition, right? But then again, everything in 2020 has been odd. So we'll kind of chalk it up to 2020.
Chalk it up, see what we can learn from it. And we'll be watching Donald Trump to see what happens in the weeks to come. And we'll be coming back for you for some commentary, because while you're not reporting at the White House any longer, I know that you keep in touch with what's going on there. So I really appreciate you joining us. And because I know you're busy.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it very much. Dan Lothian, former White House correspondent with CNN. Also Little Park Media Production Company, that's your company, and a professor at Northeastern University, among other things. I know you're a busy family man with your 2 kids and your wife. And there's one thing I had to say, even though I know I was just about to end there. Did you see what OWN News did today? I don't even know how you pronounce it, OANN, right? They had a commercial out today saying, hey, welcome Fox News viewers, come on over because Fox let you down. I thought that was sort of crazy. So let's see who's going to be on top now with all the conservative news, because a lot of the news outlets are saying, oh my God, what are we going to do now that Trump's not there? Like, Biden's going to be so boring to report on. So I think that's very interesting to watch a transition of power from Fox News, how they sort of pivoted too, right?
Yeah, that's always the thing. And there's always the transition for all the comedians. And I know that, again, late night comedy is so different than it was years ago. But that's always, when Trump was coming in, oh, it's going to be great for the late night comedians or Saturday Night Live. And so there's always the media transition that happens. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
I watch Trevor Noah religiously. I think he's so brilliant. Anything he does is so spot on, especially the way that he does Donald Trump. Like, I don't know. I mean, he just does such a great job. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Anyway, again, thank you, Dan. I appreciate you taking the time. Dan Lothian, we'll talk to you sometime before or after this inauguration, and let's just see what happens, right?
Yep. Well, we can do.
And if people want to write to you, right? If they have questions about what it was like to be a correspondent, they could just reach out on social media, right?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, although that one I usually keep for my friends. But Twitter, you can find me on Twitter as well. Just type in my name, Dan_Lothian. Sorry, I changed it. At Dan Lothian TV.
At Dan Lothian TV. Oh, really?
Yeah, just type in Dan Lothian and you'll see me pop up.
You'll find him.
I'd love to have you follow me on Twitter. I don't post a lot of stuff on Twitter, but I do share various different things from time to time. So.
Okay, appreciate it. Everybody, thank you for joining us today for Deborah Kobylt Live, special edition with Dan Lothian. Appreciate it. Now you can find our show on Facebook, on YouTube, and anywhere you get your podcasts. We're on Amazon now, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker. We're just sort of out there. Just type in our name, Deborah Kobylt Live. You'll find us. Appreciate you being here, and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.